Hello everybody. I want to take a few minutes today to talk about the state of, or what I consider to be the state of the Bigfoot community today. There's a lot of bickering, a lot of hate mongering, a lot of different things going on, and in the short run it absolutely does nothing to further our cause. We have an anomaly here that is basically unprovable. We can't prove to anybody that Bigfoot actually exists. Those of us that believe because we have seen things that cause us to believe and support our beliefs fully. But because nobody else has ever seen these things, we can't really use that as a justifiable empirical evidence that supports our beliefs. There's something out there. We don't know what it is. Many people think it's some sort of a primate, a monkey. Other people believe it's a human being. And for the record, I tend to believe that now myself. Originally, when I got into Bigfoot research about 4 years ago, I didn't believe that. I thought we were looking for some sort of relative to the gorilla, but since then I have come to the conclusion that we're not. We're actually dealing with something entirely different here, and yet something entirely familiar. So, where are we at? We're at a lot of different problems here. We have these people that want to take advantage of the situation and make some fast bucks. You have a couple of movies that have come out recently, or that may be coming out by the time you read this or watch this video. But I don't really want to isolate names with some of the things that are going on here. But to be honest with you, a couple of names really stick out. They have to be addressed if we're going to discuss this in a forthright manner. We have two parties by the name of Dyer and Smeja, or Smeja. I'm not really sure how it's pronounced. I've heard it quite frequently, Smeja, so I'm going to use that pronunciation, who supposedly have killed a Bigfoot. But we have a lot of other people out there that supposedly killed here we have one description that I read of one of these people. Calls himself a hunter, but a true hunter, somebody who is actually a hunter, will never, ever, ever point and pull the trigger at something that they cannot positively identify. And yet we have this person saying that he saw it, he couldn't tell what it was, he could not identify it, but it walked on two legs like a man. How could he be sure that it was not a man? Somebody in a ghillie suit. It's really tough to tell. You can, if the lighting conditions are just right, you can actually confuse bears with a human being. In full daylight, up close, there's no way you can make a comparison. But when you get into a occluded environment where it might be foggy or it might be dark, a lot of shadows, or if it's not clearly visible, you have that possibility where you can make a mistake. You can make a misidentification. So we have this guy who claims to be a hunter, shot something that he couldn't identify, which is breaking the first and foremost rule of hunting, and that is never shoot what you cannot identify. So we have some situations like that, and then you get into the Dyer situation where he supposedly shot a Bigfoot, which had been advertised as being shot in the surrounding area of a homeless camp in San Antonio, Texas. Yet he can't produce, or will not produce, the body for a direct examination. They have a situation here that I find hard and difficult to follow, in that most state attorney generals, if you kill something that is walking bipedally, they're going to demand the body for evidence, and you're going to be charged with manslaughter. Now they say, well, you can't do that because you can't identify it. And yet we have this Melba Ketchum, also from Texas, who has supposedly run exhaustive DNA tests. I haven't seen the results. I know they're out there. They've been published. But from what I've heard of the report, I'm not gonna spend $30 to get the report, because it really doesn't do anything except going beyond the basic steps of listing the basic sequences that they've been able to extract from mitochondrial DNA and non-mitochondrial DNA. I guess there were, from what I understand, hundreds of samples. But at any rate, to shorten this up a little bit, her bottom line is that this creature supposedly is part human and part novel hominid. She can't identify the novel hominid. Now, for what it's worth, genetically speaking, in reproductive terms, it is impossible to crossbreed between different species. A lot of people have tried, and they've been met with constant failure for one reason or another. So, if historical records are true, and these Bigfoot have been kidnapping American Indian women and other women, and having reproductive sessions, if you want to call it that, to be polite, and having offspring, then plain and simple, this hairy man of the woods and the hairy women of the woods are human beings. You cannot mate a human and a gorilla or a chimpanzee or a orangutan or any of those other primates. They're two different species. They're separate species. And we make the mistake that, to further the cause of the evolutionist, that human beings sprung from, the primate line. And, I'm not going to bother with it in this video, because it's really a lengthy discussion to support my views, and we could be looking at easily an hour-plus session. However, I have done some extensive research. Like I said, I have seen a figure in the woods. To give you a little bit of background on my involvement in the history with Bigfoot, and why I believe there's something there is we'll go way back to I believe it was late '76 or early '77. I think it was more like December, late November, December of '76. However, it was wintertime. But at any rate, the movie Legend of Boggy Creek was going to be on a distant television station. They had every Saturday afternoon a double creature feature. Those of you that live in the Northeast will know what I'm talking about here. But they had a double creature feature, and one of those films was going to be The Legend of Boggy Creek, which came out in, I believe it was, what, '74, something like that. I'd never heard of it until that time, at any rate. Coming from northern Maine, I didn't really care much about what was going on in the rest of the world. But at any rate, discussion came up at work on it. Somehow, don't really remember. That was ages and ages ago. So, but the discussion about whether or not there was a local creature called the Durham gorilla that had been seen, and at the time, the basic gist of it was, by a couple of the people who worked there, that it was apparently somebody they knew that had rented and subsequently stolen a gorilla costume from a local costume shop in a nearby city. My guess is that he rented it with the intention of taking it back, and then when his little prank turned into something more than that, he decided that he was going to keep it because there might quite possibly may be some criminal actions being filed against him for causing such a furor. But I guess certain neighborhoods of the town of Durham, Maine were torn up, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that came to see the Durham gorilla and to collect evidence and to, you know, see the sights and join in on the festivities that really were not there. But that was my first encounter with the Bigfoot community, and it really wasn't much of an interaction as such because nobody believed in Bigfoot. But I watched the movie, thought it was pretty interesting, and pretty much forgot about it over the years. And you know, I'd seen it come up here time and again on various cable networks and stuff, but I never watched the movie again. I do now own a copy of it, though, by the way. It is a fairly decent movie for you know, the budget that it was produced under. There's some things about it that, you know, lead me to believe that a lot of artistic license was taken in it. But to get back to my my story, along about the late 1990s, there was an incident just a couple, 3 miles as the crow flies from where I lived, over in Poland, Maine, where a couple of guys had reported seeing a large bipedal hairy creature crossing the road in front of them. And again, that was, you know, about 3 to 4 possibly. I'd have to dig out a map and actually measure it, but I believe that's about what the distance was as a crow flies from where I lived. But at that same time, I'm not sure if it was the same night or the following night or maybe the night before, but it was in that same time frame where I lived. I lived on a dead-end street with a community dumpster that had been ransacked during the night, and there were what I thought were bear tracks all around the dumpster in the morning. And I didn't find that out. Both of these two things didn't click together until about 3 to 4 months later, when I was sitting in a waiting room and happened to be reading a aging newspaper that had a brief piece. It was maybe 30 or 40 words long. It was just a filler piece on that sighting, and I put 2 and 2 together, and I said, maybe that wasn't really a bear, maybe it was actually that bipedal creature. And that was pretty much the end of that. And then a couple of years later, driving up on Route 27 through the Belgrade Lakes region of Maine, I came around a bend of the road, and I saw a creature. There was some newly laid stone on the side of the road for drainage. It had actually just been a recently completed road project. But I saw what I thought originally was a moose in the growing shadows entering the woods, and I slowed down to take a closer look. And turned out it wasn't really a moose after all, because out of the moose, an arm stuck up and pushed the brush away. Moose just don't do that. So it wasn't a moose, it was large. I could only see 2 legs. You know, it had a large body, but it was getting dark. There were a lot of shadows, and it was hard to tell for sure. And the passenger that was in the car with me was sound asleep, so I didn't really want to stop and look. But I did smell the odor. The windows were open, and I went on from there. And you know, after that point, when I was driving around the backwoods of Maine, I would keep looking and keep my eyes out just in case I saw something weird again. I have on a couple of occasions saw some things off to the woods, but driving too fast, you can't really be sure what they were. I have seen bear on the side of the woods, as well as moose, deer, you know, all kinds of animals. So it's hard to tell the difference between you know, what's real and isn't real when you're in certain situations. But you know, when you know what you're looking for, it makes it a little easier to tell whether what you're looking for is actually something that you know what it is or something that you don't know. So, but going on, we'll cut this short. I'm already going longer than I probably should have. But about 4 years ago, I got seriously interested in this research as I was doing some research on various pieces of Maine folklore. One of these is the Wild Men of Somerset. And I'm going to get into that in another video. I've dug up a lot of stuff about that, and it's going to take a long time to go over it. So that's going to be a longer video, maybe a two-parter. But anyhow, out of that research, I came up with a couple of books. One of them was Bigfoot, Man, Beast, or Myth, which I didn't really fully like. So I redid it and added some stuff and took some stuff out of the other one. And I have this book called Sasquatch, Searching for the Answer. I've got it up online for sale at $20. It's actually packed with a lot of information. It's 260 plus pages long with all kinds of information, research notes, and discussion on various aspects of Bigfoot. And I found that up until around the turn of the 20th century there, the late 1890s, the early 1900s, up until that time, this creature was always, without exception, considered to be a wild man of the woods. It wasn't until the sideshow freaks, with the wild men, started to give way to actual monkeys, orangutans, gorillas, and various other primates were started to circulate quite heavily around the country for entertainment purposes. That people related these wild men of the woods as monkey men or mountain apes, various other names like that. The big question is what is Bigfoot? But the even bigger one is, does Bigfoot even exist? For my money, yes, it does. But there's a lot of different things that I cover in here. Bigfoot, quite unlike a sea serpent, can actually detract. And to do that, we have to learn some things about them. Take, for instance, this particular picture here that I'll put up of a footprint that I found. Sorry about the wind, but it's not a very nice day out. I can't guarantee that it's a big footprint, but it certainly looks like one. It's a lot bigger than what my foot is. I would say it would probably be 16 to 18 inch track. It wasn't fully there. Part of it was actually under a crushed log, or a branch rather. But that is actually what started me on my real quest for a Bigfoot. I've also, in that area, I found a pile of mollusks, freshwater mollusks, all nice and neatly polished, or piled rather, that apparently had been eaten. But to get back to the book, there's a lot of good pictures in here, and I'm going to, when I get home, I'm going to edit in a bunch of those pictures and some page clips and stuff so you can see what this is. But again, it's $20. It's called Sasquatch, Searching for the Answer. You can get it online at Amazon, or you can go to my Lulu. But take a look at these pictures coming up, and see whether you want to try the book out or not. Again, $20. The link will be down in the description underneath this video, where you can go to purchase that. A couple of different places. But one of the things, and we'll get back to the original discussion here of today's state of the state in Bigfootery. One of the reasons that I believe that it's quite likely is a human that we're dealing with and not strictly an animal, is that there are references to these wild men of the woods stretching all the way back to biblical times, the pre-Christian era, for thousands of years, and they started in the Middle East. Today, there has been a wild man mentioned in the scriptures, and also in a lot of the Muslim literature. You have some issues also. Today, we have, like in Pakistan, there's a wild man of the mountains called the Bar Manu, which quite likely may be extinct from that region by now. I haven't heard of any recent sightings of anything like that within the last maybe 3/4 of a century to a century ago. Stretching all the way through the Asian jungles, down into Australia, up across through Asia, and across to this new continent, all the way down to the very tip of South America. You know, couple of interesting things that can connect these peoples together is that I think the Bigfoot was actually the true First Nation of this continent. What we call the Amerindians today, I believe, were followers of these creatures, and I think that these creatures quite likely had relations with some of the Indians, and along the way from the Middle East to the southern tip of South America you have a lot of possibilities where, genetically speaking, these things can and may have happened. For instance, this one picture of an Ona Indian. It's called an Ona Bell. It's from the Century magazine back in the 1800s, late 1800s. But that's a now extinct tribe of Indians that lived in Tierra del Fuego. And the average size of the females were just over 6 feet. The average size of the males were somewhere between 6 and 7 foot tall. There were Indians in that area, that tribe, that were over 7 feet easily, and it was a normal everyday thing. They called themselves the Ona Indians, the Ona people, and it's kind of interesting because the height aspect of Bigfoot is included or inclusive in their genetic structure of gigantism, or the tall height. Another genetic anomaly that is consistent with Bigfoot sightings is the hairy bodies. Some people seem to think that they got a lot of fur, like Chewbacca on Star Wars. But if you really look at the sightings reports, you're looking at hair that's probably more likely 2 to 4 inches max around their body. A little bit longer on the legs maybe, and possibly the forearms, but a lot more hair on their head, and their face is fully covered, which goes to the aspect of hirsutism. Now, in Japan, on the island of Lesso, which is north of Japan, the Japan Island, there's a tribe of Indians that are very hairy. They have a lot of hair over their bodies. The men have hair all over their face. The women don't have so much hair on the face. They have some, but not a lot. But their name is the Aino Indians, the Aino tribes. We call them today the Ainos or Ainos. And their history also is rather shady. They don't really have much for origination tales, other than the fact that they came from across the sea, and they have some sort of connection to what they call the bears. But they don't consider the bears to be a holy animal. They will kill the bears and they will eat the meat. Well, don't know how many of those. But anyhow, this is just a couple of different things that I look at in here, and I go through a lot of different theories, a lot of different possibilities, and I look at many different things that could relate to these hairy men of the woods, what we call Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and again, Sasquatch is not their real name. It's just a kind of a mongrel name that was taken from a different tribal names from the American Northwest Indians in the British Columbia area. There's the Siatic Indians, and in a few different other names, but they were all compiled together by one guy back in, I believe, it was the 1920s. That's when the term Sasquatch was coined. But I believe there may have been two separate tribes stemming from the same family before the American Indians moved onto the continent. And one of those are called what we call Sasquatch today. The other one is called the Wendigoag. I came across a reference from the 1500s where one of the explorers had heard from a couple of the different Indian tribes of the Algonquin nations of this tribe that lived far to the north that were very tall, very hairy, and liked to eat men. Which sounds a lot like some of the stories that you get from the Sasquatch legends of the Northwest. But again, I've taken up enough of your time, and I've actually gone on longer than I really intended to. But again, Sasquatch, Searching for the Answer. You can pick it up for $20 and give it a read, see what you think, and let me know whether you like it or not. And that's it for today. I've been really busy, so I haven't had a chance to go back out into the woods to do anything serious, partly because I think that from the localized area that I've been hunting in, I think our hairy friend is gone for the season, and he won't be back until next year. So I'm expanding my search out, which means that it takes more travel time. Time is something that I don't have a lot of because there's so much going on, so you'll have to wait for some really good videos, but I got a couple compilations that I'm going to be putting up here shortly. So stay tuned for more on Bigfoot Tales, and don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe, and let me know what you think of what's going on. And again, try not to get sidetracked with a lot of the petty crap that's going on in the Bigfoot community today. If you really do some serious looking, you can find some serious researchers that actually have some very positive things, very helpful things to add to the community. But that's it for now. Have a good day.